Yes, I have my friend Jena Lorén here today. I wanted to bring her on so I could share some amazing information about the ego. It was very transformational for me back in 2020. And I talk about the ego tricks all the time. Her information changed my life. So thank you for coming on here and sharing about everything that you do.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm so glad we met so many, I don't know, 5 years now
Yeah,
and have stayed connected. And congratulations on launching the podcast and bringing me on. I love it.
love
Thanks for
it.
having me.
Yeah, definitely. I just felt like there were so many women, especially the last year, like since losing my parents and all these things. I just felt like there's so much more I want to do in life. And I mean, my transformation started when I first met you. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I was too scared. My parents told me not to, and the mind was messing with me too. So I kept going, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that." And your words create your reality. So I didn't do it. But since losing my parents in 22 and 23, 4 was a very transformational year for me as well. I finally started really, I don't listen to the mind anymore and I do what I want to do. And that's why I was like, oh, I'm so glad Jenna's relaunching her ego business. I'm glad that you're talking about the ego again because I feel like we get to that place, when these huge transitions in life happen, like losing your parents or getting divorced or, you know, turning 40, 50, 60, whatever. I think we kind of reevaluate our life, but it's knowing, are you working with the mind? Are you against the mind? Like,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah. You're working
self-aware? Are
against
you
yourself.
aware of what you're saying to yourself? Are you aware of the thoughts that you're thinking? And are you choosing those thoughts? So,
Correct.
yeah. Tell me, like, what's the definition of the ego? And then you can like kind of go into the tricks it plays on us.
Yeah, for sure. So we were just talking beforehand, right? And it's just like this. The ego, I think, I mean, any word has different meanings because we're the ones that give them meaning, right? So a word might have definition in a book somewhere, but ultimately we are the ones that give them meaning, importance, validation, etc. And so for me, as I was studying psychology and transformational work over all the years since I was 18, ego for me is really just that part of us, that separator, that protector, that part of us that is there to keep our heart beating. It's very reptilian, it's part of our frontal lobe, and it helps us to stay safe. And what I like to call it is it's our gatekeeper for any emotional or physical pain, ultimately. And what I've also come to realize in the last few years is initially I would say emotional pain, but what's true for me at least is that emotional pain is physical because it's sensational. Like when you feel a sensation that is very uncomfortable, then the tears come up, then the fears come up, then the resistance comes up, and that's what the ego is responding to. So for me, ego is definitely part of your nervous system. It's part of that fight or flight or freeze conversation. It's part of our protective automatic system that we get to benefit from. So it's not something we want to get rid of. It's not something we want to like hate on by any means. But we want to tame it. We want to outsmart it. We want to actually be in control of our faculties and not let it run the decisions that we make and the words that we speak and the thoughts that we have. And I also add the next layer of the ego conversation is really about who are you being as a consciousness? And if you identify who you are as a consciousness and the awareness that you have of yourself, then you will then naturally start to witness and observe the ego instead of being the ego. So many of us are walking around on autopilot thinking we're the ego. Like all the thoughts that we have must be who we are. It's our personality, right?
Yeah.
And I just beg to differ at this point. I think it's actually the separation of who we are. And the goal is to actually uncover, discover, and release anything that's not who we actually are, which is that infinite being, that infinite intelligence, that spiritual self, that source of self, right? That's actually being covered up by the ego, which is like the separator in my book. So it's a dance, and I think that's the important thing to get is that we've been in a dance that we haven't been aware of, And now it's time to actually, become the observer, become the manager of it, the controller, and take back our power, because I think we've given it way too much power. So yeah, and then the ego tricks came from that because I saw patterns. I saw human
Yeah.
patterns.
I definitely felt that like with the ego, like I was not aware of, like you said, I felt like, well, I can't do that. I can't do that.
They can't.
I shouldn't do that.
They should.
I kept saying all these things, but I thought that was me. But it, like you said, it was the awareness piece where you're just like, oh man, that's just my mind thinking thing.
Yeah.
That's my mind telling me stuff. Do I really believe that? Not really.
Right. Right.
Caught myself finally saying it when you brought it to my attention and made me aware. Then I was like, I don't believe that about myself. Now, how do I turn this around? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those tricks. Like I said, can't was like my big one. I'm like, I can't do that. Well,
100%.
really, it's just a choice. I don't want to. When I actually like went down into it, like it's not that I couldn't do something.
Right.
It's a choice. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
It didn't feel good.
Yeah, yeah, so you said two right there. So can't and shoulds. Then there's disappointment, there's confusion. The ego loves to confuse us. If it keeps us in confusion, then we freeze, right? Then there's fear, there's anger and frustration and irritation. Those are all the same thing. The other one that's really big is I like to call it the HW3, which is the how, what, when, where syndrome, where you're the archetype. I've got 4 egoic archetypes that I help people kind of land in or identify. And the realist, which is what I predominantly am, is you're constantly planning, you're looking for the control, you're looking for how do I do this? When does this happen? Like, what's the plan? And all of that is the future tripping experience of the egoic self. Why? Because it's trying to protect you. Right? And so there's 15 total, right? There's 15 ego tricks, and then there's 4 archetypes that all of those fit within. And you're either the illusionist, which you're letting fear and doubt and all of that take control and confusion, or the martyr is another one, which is the disappointment, the guilt, the shame, that's the one that likes to beat itself up. Like it goes really internal, like, oh, this is my fault. This is, I must be a bad person. It takes a people pleaser. That's another signal. So that martyr, and then there's the rebel, which is way more expressive, which is the anger and the judgment and the positioning and the opinionated. And, we see a lot of rebels on social media, like blowing up chats. And it's like, wow, if they would just pull back for a minute and go, why are they feeling that way? What's the judgment about? What's the hate about, right? And then the realist gets really logical and really sensible and common sense. And I've been working with that one my whole life. I'm like a recovering control freak.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating about all of them is they're so automatic at times because it's coming from an unrealized, uncovered, or hidden childhood belief that you've installed, right? I talk a lot about belief installation, and you've installed these beliefs when you're in childhood because we're such a sponge. We're adopting and we're listening, I must not be loved, so then I make up, I'm not loved, and then the rest of my life, my ego is trying to keep me away from that experience. Or, so whatever those beliefs are that are disempowering and painful, if we really uncover them, and then we realize we made them up in the first place, but the ego is like, oh, like, I'm on guard, I'm going to keep you away from that experience. And then we prove a lot, we overthink, we analyze, we avoid all of these deflection responses from the ego tricks. And the ego trick is not the source of the block, right? Or the condition, the conditioning of the program. It's the signal. It's simply the red flag. It's like, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And that's why I'm like, stick the 15 ego tricks on your fridge. Just like every day go, which one did I use today? Oh, there must be something deeper going on, right? And so my work is about helping people uncover, obviously, and discover what that deeper source is, and then being able to move through it, reframe it, and completely flip their lives and transform permanently, because we're not just putting a Band-Aid on the can't. right? Like, or the should, or the confusion, or the anger. And so many people, like, I see the anger still keeps coming back, and it's like, or the frustration, and it's like, I just would love for people to be able to get under that. And so that's what my detachment method's all about, is being able to get under it and resolve it. And I think the more, all permanent change, all transformation begins with self-awareness. And yes, like you did, like you saw like the words you were using, the limitation versus the expansion. And then you question yourself. Like, that's huge. Huge, because most people don't do that. They don't want to question themselves. They want to be right.
Right. Well, I
Right?
mean, I got to this point. So when I was going through it, I was like, my boss sucks. This is, I'm not
Judgment.
making enough money. They don't value me. And I saw myself playing victim and
Yes.
placing blame and doing some of the other things and just doing some other work as well alongside of it. I was like, oh, wait. I picked that job and I accepted that wage and I go to work every day and wake up and I bitch about it every day. But, those were all choices that I made. But until I kind of saw, the words that you used for the ego tricks, I was like,
I'm doing all that.
man, who
I
is
just got
that?
called out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, even still,
Yeah.
like you said, there's 15 of them. So it's like I'd go back and forth and I'm like,
Yes.
oh, that's me procrastinating. That's ego trying to make me procrastinate because I know I don't have to stay at this job, but I'm going to have to work on my resume. I'm going to have to tell people I'm looking for a job. I'm going to have to start my
Logistics.
own
Yeah.
business. I'm going to have to do all these other things. But, if I can just blame somebody else or, listen to the
Yeah.
ego and like, but then when you put out the words, well, I'll do this when this happens, then I
And
will.
then, yeah.
Like when I reach my limit with my boss or he really pisses me off, then I'm gonna leave. And I
Right.
was like, this is no. Why? How long is this gonna take? I was sick
Right.
of kind of being stuck in that pattern and like doing the same thing over and over. Like you said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results, like
Yeah.
so like learning those ego tricks was like transformational for me because every time I felt like I kind of got stuck in that loop, I would
Yeah.
go back and be like, what am I saying? And why am I saying this? What am I trying to protect
Right.
here? So
Yeah. I love that.
I think when I did your quiz, she's got this quiz, you guys, you'll have to go to her
Yes.
website. I think I came out the rebel, but I think
Yeah.
can it transform? Can you be different things?
Yeah, and you use, that's a good question. Yeah, and the quiz is right on the website jenalorén.com. And you have a predominant, you kind of have, like, the realist is definitely my predominant. Like, I will think through something and analyze something and like, how do I control this? How do I manage it? How do I plan for this? Like, I definitely use that. And my childhood was riddled with lack of stability and fear and hardships. And so, yes, my entire coping mechanism, which is what these ego tricks are, their protective coping mechanism, was to control my environment, like and therefore my safety. So I used it as my survival mechanism. And now, but that doesn't mean that someone else didn't use Martyr and start, like, how do I protect myself? I just people please. I sacrifice myself. I abandon myself. I make people love me by being the nicest person in the room. And nice and kind are two different things, people.
Right. Yep.
Right? And so, so what happens is different areas of your life may pull different tricks, because I find sometimes where I don't fall into the Martyr that much, but there are relationships that I have used Martyr. Absolutely.
Okay.
Guilt, for instance.
Okay.
But I tend to fall into, I would, like, if I'm more emotionally invested in someone or some relationship, then my illusionist might come out, because now I'm really afraid to let go. I'm really afraid what's on the other side of the decision, or whatever. And so, yes, you can use, I mean, that's why I say you use them all, but there is one that's predominant. It's like that's your go-to in most life situations, and different phases of life you may pull in, or maybe if money's a challenge, money might trigger a whole different belief system. Obviously, we all have our money beliefs. And then, you might get like a realist going on, because now you've really got to figure it out, and you got to control it. You got to budget. You got to make sure the dollars are set. And all of it, is like a mental game to keep control of your money. And it's like, that's what actually blocks the money, is trying to hold on so tight. and control everything. And so, especially because money is just a spiritual idea, it's just energy, and yet we're trying to control something that we think is tangible, and it's not. And so, yeah, and then relationships is a whole, that may be a whole different level of emotional investment. You may not have had the coping mechanisms and the love and the nurturing from relationships as a child, and then you turn into a martyr because you're trying to get the love, right? But money, you had a different relationship to. Everything's relatedness, by the way.
Right.
But so yes, to your point, it does kind of bounce from thing to thing. That's why it's, I think, important as a body of work that everybody learns what the 15 tricks are. But I think it's helpful to, when you're getting, kind of new to it, that you learn what your archetype is so you can identify it quickly, but not ignore the fact that there's these other tricks that might flare up. And then we work through the detachment method to, unpack it. And yeah, so great question, because yeah, I think it can kind of differ in the different areas of life.
Yeah. Do you see, like, as for women, like, do women have like a general type that you see a lot of, or like, are we always the pleasers, or always the thing, like, or is everyone very different, or do you see some repeating patterns?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. We could potentially generalize. Like, first of all, my quiz, I've had 1,500 people take the quiz thus
Nice.
far, and I looked at the pie chart. It's like, what's the most predominant archetypes? And the truth is the realist and the illusionist are the primary archetypes out there in the test, right? However, I didn't split it between men or women because I don't have
Okay.
that question, so I don't know.
Gotcha.
But I think we could generalize some of those patterns. However, I think it really depends on just what you took on as a child to try to manage your environment,
Yeah.
right? And because if you were in high, I turned into high masculine, wounded masculine. And that was a big piece of that is usually a realist or rebel, which is my second. And so now Rebel has really calmed down in the last year and a half, which is quite interesting to me. Really, really calmed down. So it doesn't pop up as much. And that's to your point. I think different phases of life, different things activate. And I was, in a relationship that was constantly activating that part of me, my frustration it was just me fighting up against myself. Basically, I was just like so done with certain patterns and I wasn't getting myself out of them, right? And so I got frustrated. And so a lot of times our rebel and our anger and our frustration is absolutely a projection, right? It's something we're not complete with inside, or we're abandoning something inside of us and we're just pissed off about it, right? But then we project that on everybody else. So and it's just like I mentioned, the social media, you can see it all day long. It's just like, wow, just like look in the mirror. Like, let's start with the mirror, then you have a chance to like see what's actually going on. But I send them love, right? Just send everybody love, because underneath it is love. Underneath all of the ego tricks is pure love. That's who we are. That is our core. That's every human being. We're all connected. We're all energetically connected. We're all part of the source. I call it GUS, God, Universe, Source. And if we can return to that unity is not agreement. Unity is not everybody in the country and everybody in the world agrees. No, that's not unity. Unity is returning to the oneness that we are, and loving and respecting people for where they are, right? And we get to have different opinion. We get to have different preferences. And that's a big piece of opinion, is just everybody's fighting to be right in their judgment and their opinion. And there's a difference between, right, the judgment and preference. And so if we can lean into our preferences and go, oh, I prefer chocolate, and not hate everybody that loves vanilla,
Right.
then we might have some unity.
Right.
But unity isn't let's get everybody on the same page and everybody, agrees with something, because we don't even have that within ourselves. We have to honor ourselves for all the differences that we are and all of the ebbs and flows and the contrasts that we have in our own life, let alone someone else's, right? And so I think a big piece of that unity is coming back to the source energy and being able to operate from that place. And that's my intention, is I want everybody to raise their consciousness to a point where they're connecting to their highest self self and their highest version of self, and being able to look through that lens to everybody else out there, right? And be like, send them love if you don't agree. It doesn't mean you're right. It just means that you're not hating on them and disagreeing. And it's just like, they don't have to agree with you. That's the whole beautiful orchestration and tapestry of life, is not having like everybody be the same color and same decision and same ideas. Innovation comes from that beautiful tapestry, right? It comes from source, and then we all get to deliver our expression of things. So I think that's a big piece of my message as well, is just like,
Absolutely.
what does it really mean to find who you are and operate and live from that place, and know that you are infinite self, you are abundance, you are wealth, you are love, you are all the things.
Right.
All the things that we all want and desire, and we have just completely used an ego to separate us from that. And so I'm like, let's peel the layers off. Let's rip it off.
Well,
Right?
and that's something I found too, as I started like recognizing the ego tricks.
Yeah.
Then I started kind of beating myself up, like going,
Oh yeah.
why did
did I
you
do
do this
that?
for so long? Why did you believe this? What, and then
Little martyr.
going through all of, just the healing through that and the forgiveness
Yeah.
through that and moving forward, I think is a big part of it too. Like, yeah, once you recognize it and once you're aware of it, like, don't beat yourself up over it.
Mhm.
Just, I don't know if that's that part of the detachment method that kind
Yeah.
of release a lot of that stuff, because I mean, I don't remember if you might have had that back when I met you, but also I wasn't in the same mindset that I am 5 years later now.
Right.
Like at that time,
Yeah.
you could have told me detachment method, and I would have been like, yeah, good luck.
Yeah, like
That,
over there.
that ain't happening. I just learned I said can't too many times in one paragraph.
That's the beginning.
So I mean, I think that's also something that people need to understand, is that we kind of still do heal and grow at our own rate.
Absolutely.
Like I'm rereading books that I read,
Mhm.
2018, 2019, and I'm like, oh, I read Atomic Habits, and I just opened it up the other day, and I was like, oh man, I need to get back to work because I forgot about this, and this, and this. So I mean,
Right.
but I'm at a different level mentally, spiritually, physically. Like, I mean, so many things are different. So,
Yes.
when you brought up the ego tricks again, I was like, oh man, those were so good. And I'm like, am I still doing that? Like, what do I need to figure out? What do I need to,
Still practicing.
and I don't want to say like fix, because I
Right.
don't really believe in fixing anymore. I feel like everything's just kind of a lesson and a practice.
100%.
So
Yes.
it's,
Nobody's
I
broken.
mean, yeah, and you'll keep learning these over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It never
Yeah.
goes away. I love that you're teaching it again. I love that, all your offerings that you have coming out. Will you tell us a little bit more about like what you're offering right now, where they can find you, like all the good
Sure.
stuff. Like if you're is it women and men, or?
I attract mostly women, or
Okay.
men who get it. They
Yeah,
resonate. It's
right.
fun.
Yeah, so I mean, there's women out there. We're all kind of looking for our things. Like we have the coaches and the things and the, like, are you looking for this community? Like, tell us more about like what you're up to right now and like
Yeah.
how people can find you.
Oh, thank you for that invitation there. Is one, I did do a rebrand. So I uncoupled last year from 22-year marriage, and the good news, I created that we're still friends and great, and so we are. And from that, my name changed. So I went from Jena Rodriguez, so you'll still see some of that out there in my YouTube or materials or videos. And then Brave Masters was my previous name, like brand. The company will stay the same, but Jena Lorén really has taken on a whole new life of its own. That's my new name, and so I went ahead and rebranded to JenaLorén.com. I'm sure you'll share the link so they get the spelling right.
Yeah.
But JenaLorén.com, it has everything on there, and then with that, I really wanted to open the space. I've been very much in private coaching, mentorship, and I have a program that I've had for this whole time, years. It's called the Masters, and so that's still available. It has obviously limited seats because of the private nature of it, but it's like an all-in program. But in more of a fashion of allowing the masses and people from all over to be able to really tap in, get the support, start taking those practice steps forward, I created the collective. And so I'm super excited to have that available for everyone. It's only $44 a month, like the cost of lunch.
Mhm.
But you get a group coaching call with me. You get access to all of the quiz, the ego tricks, the ego shift course, the meditations, the master classes, all of the things that I do to try to help people create that awareness that you're talking about and practice. And of course, since the ego tricks was developed and the archetypes, I also have like the ego traps and the deflection responses and different ego hacks, and all of that just comes with it, right? It's just like, well, how do I behave on a daily basis? How do I catch myself, right? How do I pay attention to my mind? And then of course it has the community aspect where people, get support, and I do challenges and posts and, keep people motivated. And I really would love, that's like the beginning step if somebody wants to start somewhere, where you really start to learn what's going on in your mind that is separating you from all the things you want to create, all the goals. If you're not getting your goal, it's you. It's not outside of you. So that's a big piece of it.
A lot of people don't like to hear that part, but
I
yeah.
know.
Sorry, what Taylor Swift said
What's
it.
that song?
I'm the problem. It's me. I'm the problem. It's
I'm the
me.
problem.
Guys, she's so smart. I love her.
Yes. Thanks, Taylor. That is the truth. We're the
Right?
problem. No,
No,
but
but it is taking that accountability
yeah,
and accepting that you've created this life, but you also get to undo it and do it
which
the way
is
you
the
want
fun
to.
part.
Yeah,
Yeah, when you
that's
take
exactly,
radical
yeah, it actually
ownership.
gets really fun once you like start recognizing it.
Yeah.
Then it's more like think those thoughts. Don't, it becomes more of a game. It's kind of fun. But
Yes. Like, how many ego tricks can I identify in
right.
a day?
Oh, I heard
I
you say
spy.
that.
I spy ego.
Right, I spy ego.
Yeah.
Oh, that's your
Yeah.
ego talking to me. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Yes. It
Well,
is a fun game.
yeah,
So
thank you so much. I'm glad I
thank
got to
you.
share you. Like I said, you were transformational in my beginning of my journey back in 2020. I mean, I
Yeah.
started like 2018, but it like those ego tricks were like,
I
man,
love that.
it took me a different direction. So I love that you're sharing it, and I love to share you. So thank you,
I
friend.
appreciate that. I had no idea. I really, really appreciate that that made such a difference,
I
and I'm
do.
so
I
glad we're
seriously,
so
I have them printed out somewhere close-ish, and I pull them out every once in a while, and I'm like, am I using these?
awesome.
Am I using these? Because I'm eliminating something out of here.
Yeah.
Because I do have bigger things to do, and I do have more money to make, and all of this, like, where am I getting tripped up on this?
You're
So
right. Very good. Very
yeah.
good. I love that. Yes, thank you, my friend. I'm
All right.
happy to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenna.
Thank you.